Hello, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of CBS News Baltimore. I'm Denise Koch. Today marks 1 month since the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge shook the city of Baltimore, and its impact was felt around the globe. At around 1:30 in the morning on March 26th, the Francis Scott Key Bridge was hit by a container ship, causing it to collapse into the Patapsco River below. The Dolly, a massive, over 900-foot-long ship, lost power while leaving the port and crashed into one of the bridge's concrete supports. Within seconds, the iconic Baltimore Bridge vanished from its place in the skyline, sending tens of thousands of tons of steel into the water below. 1 month later, teams are making huge progress at the Key Bridge collapse site. A major milestone on the Patapsco River happened just yesterday as a massive cargo ship successfully traveled through the brand new 35-foot deep channel. Now, that new channel is only temporarily open until Monday. Meantime, crews are preparing to remove a 5,000-ton section of the bridge that remains sitting on top of the Dolly. Getting that off will help crews then reopen the main federal channel by their deadline of May the 10th. But even as progress is being made on the salvage operation, it is hard to forget the 6 construction workers who tragically lost their lives in the collapse. Although, according to NTSB, traffic was stopped 90 seconds before the bridge was hit, those 8 men were on the bridge filling potholes, and they were unable to escape in time. 2 were rescued from the water soon after the collapse and survived with only minor injuries, but 6 men died in the collapse. 3 of the victims' bodies have been recovered from the river and identified as Dorlian Cabrera, Alejandro Hernandez, and Maynor Yasir Suavo Sandoval. A 4th victim was also recovered but has not been publicly identified at the request of his family. However, 1 month later, the bodies of 2 other workers, they still, to this day, have not been recovered. Well, there have been many tributes over the past month to remember those victims, and one of the most profound is right on the Anne Arundel County and Baltimore City line. That's where we find Caroline Forbach, who just spoke with a woman who has a personal connection to the tragedy. Caroline.
Well, Denise, over the past month, this memorial dedicated to the victims has served as a place where people can come and pay their respects. And for many, it serves as a reminder of the tragedy that took place. We spoke with a woman from Glen Burnie who says she will never forget what she heard that night. 1 month ago today, Nakia took the Francis Scott Key Bridge home to Glen Burnie after attending a family event in Baltimore. Hours later, she heard a crash.
My husband thought that it was a big, truck accident or something.
Then she got a text from her daughter, who's an EMT, saying the bridge collapsed and she was responding to the scene.
She sees a lot of things, and that was probably the only thing that really shook her up and had her very, very emotional for the first time. And so that was quite devastating for her.
The devastation was felt throughout the area, especially as we learned of the 6 construction workers who were killed. They were filling potholes on the bridge when it was struck by a barge and collapsed. So far, the bodies of 4 of the victims have been recovered, while 2 are still missing amid the wreckage in the Patapsco River.
People, just trying to work and make a living, and, something like that happens.
There's now a growing memorial on Fort Armistead Road about a mile from the bridge to pay tribute to the victims. Nakia says it strikes a chord every time she drives by.
Every time I see that, I just, I have so much empathy for the families, just in imagining what their loved ones was going through, at the time that happened. So it's kind of hard. You have a lot of empathy for, what they're going through.
Now, the bridge collapse has impacted the day-to-day lives for many who live in the area, but Nakia says the inconvenience that she deals with is nothing compared to what the families must be going through. Reporting live here in Hawkins Point, Caroline Forbach for WJZ. Denise.
Thank you, Caroline. Indeed. Well, many of us will always remember the moment we first heard. The Key Bridge fell in the middle of the night a month ago this morning, and Paul Gessler takes a step back to review the month Baltimore and Maryland none of us will ever forget.
We are following breaking news early this morning. This is a live look at the Key Bridge.
We hit the air at 4 a.m.
We understand that there are people in the water and that there are rescue operations underway right now.
We would all wake up different than when we went to bed.
It's something I never thought I would have to say, but the Francis Scott Key Bridge is completely gone.
Video in the darkness and uncertainty of what had happened hours earlier.
For some people, this may be very difficult to see.
Difficult for many more
It went down so quickly.
to unsee.
Your eyes see it, but your brain doesn't want to believe it.
It's just a catastrophe and just doesn't even seem real.
It's devastating.
It was like an action movie, you know? You feel like it's not real, it's a dream.
It was real.
A tragedy of this scale.
All too real.
Is sometimes a bit incomprehensible.
Like an earthquake. Sounded like a big bash of thunder.
If only it was thunder.
I never even thought about like a ship actually hitting the bridge.
No way!
As the hours passed, we would see more. We would learn more.
Francis Scott Key Bridge just got hit by a cargo ship.
We'd learn of the heroic effort to close the bridge.
Hold all traffic on the Key Bridge. There's a ship approaching that just lost their steering.
We'd learn others weren't warned in time.
I'm just praying for everybody involved. It's sad.
C-13 dispatch, the whole bridge just fell down. Start, everybody. The whole bridge just collapsed.
At least 2 people have been rescued from the water. One is in serious condition.
At dawn's early light,
Here's another live look.
there was proof for what we all feared.
Never thought in the wildest dreams that this would happen.
It would be the start of a nightmare for 6 families.
What people were trying to do is probably coming and going to work just to feed their families, and you know what I'm saying? Now they're gone.
I feel bad. Only God knows how hard my heart aches.
Jose Lopez's wife described him as a family man, a loving father.
Triste.
His cousin this week told us she wants him found, she said, to give him an honest burial. Vigils, funerals, prayers, they've consumed this month.
Fathers, uncles, brothers.
A roadside memorial grows for Jose, Carlos, Miguel, Maynor, Dorlian, and Alejandro.
Makes me feel like it could have been my family member. That's usually how Hispanic men start their life here.
4 men recovered, 2 men still missing, 2 families still waiting.
Waiting your family, waiting your father, waiting the mother.
They obviously came here to the country to support their family, try to live a better life, you know.
We know now what's more American than that. Hard work, getting ahead.
Seeing it gone feels like a piece of the heart and soul of the community has been ripped out.
It was why the bridge was built in the first place. Construction took years.
I remember when they started building that bridge.
It opened with much anticipation in March of 1977, the final puzzle piece to enclosing the Baltimore Beltway.
It's a monument. It's like the gateway to Baltimore.
Since the 70s, it was always just there. Decade after decade, there, upstaging a tugboat captain in a 1978 WJZ feature.
We're coming up on the Francis Scott Key Bridge.
There, 185 feet above us in 1985.
Contaminants drift over to
There too, just the night before, through a boat window as we covered a cleanup effort in nearby Bear Creek. It would be the last time the bridge saw daylight, and we saw it.
A bridge is a very fragile structure, like a house of cards. You hit it in the perfect spot, and it's gone.
Gone now. Giving way to recovery and salvage. Divers struggle daily through murky conditions.
We're working around the clock. It's a complex operation.
Tons of steel and debris are now on land. Tons more remain at sea.
Safety's paramount. A lot of salvage crews, dive teams.
We are working as fast as humanly possible.
We're strong communities. We come together in times of tragedy.
Check. 1, 2.
It's good to see you, Baltimore.
The neighborhood's hurt, of course.
every state in the United States. This is affecting every state.
We have a very long road ahead of us.
It's going to affect more than just the port. We're talking about neighborhoods here.
Thousands of port workers rely on the shipping channel, shut down until a portion was reopened Thursday.
While a monumental milestone, it's not over yet.
It's the start, it seems, to a new era for the port, for Maryland, an era of rebuilding.
We are Maryland tough, and we are Baltimore strong, and we are going to rebuild this.
Governor Moore's rally cry to us on day one,
Maryland tough, Maryland tough, Maryland tough,
echoed at every chance in the weeks since.
Baltimore strong, Baltimore strong, Baltimore strong.
It will take strength, of course, in the months ahead. It was there one day, gone the next.
It's history. It's our history. Francis Scott Key Bridge.
But it's more than that.
It's iconic.
The Key Bridge stood for decades. It stood for us.
It's just surreal, unbelievable. It's hard to believe.
It's just like
an empty space. You know, it's not there, it's gone.
The state of Maryland is still very much mourning. Part of our soul fell into the Patapsco River. A part of our landscape.
47 years it stood.
The fact that it's gone is almost impossible to take in.
Part of our identity.
It's going to be a long road, long time. Hopefully, you know, in the end, it'll rise again out of the depths.
1 month down, many years to go. I'm Paul Gessler reporting for CBS News Baltimore.
Wow, beautifully done, Paul, and really reminding us just what we have lost. All right, WJZ and the United Way of Central Maryland continuing our efforts to help those who've been impacted by this tragedy. To learn more about how you can partner with us, you can scan that QR code on your screen, or you can just go to WJZ.com and you'll find a link to help. All right, still to come as we continue to look back at the months since the Key Bridge collapse.
A port in the storm. I'm Tara Lynch, and I sat down with the executive director of the Port Administration, learning more about the challenges after the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge.
When the bridge fell 1 month ago, the Port of Baltimore, of course, was shut down, impacting thousands of port workers and their families. It happened just weeks after the port's new executive director had just taken the job. Tara Lynch sat down with Jonathan Daniels, talking about that terrifying day when one of the nation's busiest ports sat idle.
You think about everything that can go wrong.
C-13 dispatch, the whole bridge just fell down. The whole bridge just collapsed.
The collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge was not in that top 50.
Jonathan Daniels is used to early mornings and late nights. But nothing compares to March 26th, when the Fort McHenry Channel, one of the deepest on the East Coast, shut down.
We do train as port professionals for the closure of a channel, but certainly not to this extent.
He woke up to a phone full of missed calls and text messages, rushed to work, and started to process what happened. Now, 4 weeks later, he's still working through the details of getting regular ship traffic up and running, impacting 250,000 jobs across the region.
We need to allow the port to be able to rebound and to be able to set the stage for that next level of growth.
Several ports along the seaboard stepped up when Baltimore was forced to stand down. As crews work to open the full channel, Daniels says he's made his message clear to companies and shipping lines. Baltimore wants its cargo back.
They oftentimes, the last question is, what can we do to help during this period of time? And it's very simple. You can come back when the channel opens up.
Despite the challenges, the Port Administration says this is an opportunity to grow, creating a new normal after weathering the storm.
How do we make sure that we not only rebound, but we rework this and allow us the opportunity to be able to grow?
Moving the port forward will include expansion in several sectors to make it more competitive and increase capacity.
We're looking at growth that is cruise, it's cargo, it's container. We're also looking at expanding what we do for the environment.
The Trade Point Atlantic Terminal will be taking on more containers and more shipping lines.
We should be doubling the size our capacities in the container market in the next few years. And also there's a significant investment that's being made by CSX and the state of Maryland in the Howard Street Tunnel.
Getting to these future goals will take time, but the primary goal is getting ships to the docks and people back to work.
I'm not entirely sure we ever get back to normal. We certainly won't get back to what it was like March 25th. March 26th and beyond, there is a new normal. We're going to have to adapt to that, and we're going to have to grow around what occurred that morning.
The bridge is gone.
Reporting in Baltimore, Tara Lynch, CBS News, Baltimore.
Ambitious plans for the future. Well, as many of you know, it's not just the ports being hurt by the bridge collapse. Baltimore small businesses have also been facing real hardship. Frederick Mensa owns a trucking company that picks up containers from the Port of Baltimore. He says he hasn't had any work since the bridge collapse. Thanks to a disaster declaration made by Governor Moore, the Small Business Administration is now offering low-interest loans for nonprofits and small businesses like Mensa's impacted, who previously were unable to qualify for unemployment or other government assistance. However, some small business owners and independent contractors, they're hesitant about taking a loan, and they wish they had other options.
It's not just a loan, you know what I'm saying, because you get a loan, it comes with interest and all that. And if not because of the bridge collapse, we are just working and then paying our bills and all those kind of things. So we need a little bit grant also to help us to get through this.
And the disaster, as we have been reporting, affected 15,300 jobs directly related to port activity. All right, obviously a closed port means lots of supply chain issues. Not only is the Dolly and the number of container ships on board trapped in the harbor, its presence also limits other similarly sized ships from bringing their goods as well. So we're joined now by Professor Martin Dresner from the University of Maryland School of Business, who is an expert in supply chain management. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. This is something most of us didn't even know existed until the pandemic, and now we really are beginning to understand it. So a month ago today, Martin, what exactly happened immediately that impacted the supply chain?
A lot of inventory got stuck in Baltimore, and this inventory was supposed to be going either to other places in the United States or exported to other countries. And there were a lot of businesses that had their inventory frozen. So this is a huge issue for them. They have customers who are waiting for these products. They have money tied up in the inventory, so there are cash flow issues. So it can create big problems for lots of companies.
So we've seen that trucking routes have changed and some ships have used other ports. But how much of this impact has continued and has even increased since that day 1 month ago?
Well, I think it took a while for companies to figure out a way around the Port of Baltimore. And so those companies that were lucky enough not to have their cargo stuck at the port were able to find different routes through Port of New York and New Jersey or Norfolk or one of the other ports along the East Coast. So it cost them money because the rerouting was likely more expensive than their initial routing through Baltimore, but they were able to get through. It was those companies that actually had their products stuck in the Port of Baltimore where the timing was just terrible, and the problem has lasted until just I guess yesterday the first container ships were able to get out of the port.
Yeah, and we're all bracing as consumers to see the trickle-down effect of those costs. So again, you mentioned yesterday, finally a ship went through. So that's hopeful. But how long do you think these issues could continue? What's the real critical issue here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that now that they have at least the channel cleared, we're going to get back to normal, I think, probably within the next couple of weeks. The big problem was, of course, clearing all the debris from the port channel. As that's being done and that's being concluded, then I think that the port can get back to fairly normal operations, with the exception of the fact that Key Bridge is not around anymore, and there are a lot of trucks that went over that bridge. So they're going to have to go through the western part of the Baltimore Beltway, which can be pretty congested. So there could be some delays in getting products delivered to their customers.
All right, Professor Martin Dresner from University of Maryland, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again as we watch those ships begin to go through and then eventually the bridge rebuilt.
Thank you.
Thank you. And when we come back, Dennis Valera has the latest on salvage and recovery operations at the site of the collapse. Stay with us. Salvage operations in the aftermath of the Key Bridge collapse have been front and center from the start, not only clearing the debris from the river, but also, of course, immediately upon the bridge collapse, recovering the victims who fell in the water that fateful morning. Dennis Valera gives us an up-close look at these operations and those leading the charge.
There are nearly 400 personnel working to clear what's left of the Francis Scott Key Bridge and refloat the Dolly so that they can reopen the Port of Baltimore. This is one of the vessels that are working in that effort. This is debris vessel Reynolds. They are clearing debris, putting it here in this bench, and even towing some out of the water if needed.
Day in and day out, crews have been working 24/7 to clear up the aftermath of the Key Bridge collapse. A large piece remains entangled on the Dolly, keeping it in place since it struck the bridge a month ago. More than 1,300 tons of steel have been taken out of the Patapsco River. Pieces of the bridge are taken to nearby shipyards, like in Sparrows Point.
This is one of the pieces that crews pulled out Monday night. They tell us it's one of the smaller pieces, weighing around 150 to 200 tons. It took 2 days to rig and cut it out of the water.
From here, pieces are cut down even more so they can eventually be recycled. To bring maritime traffic back to the Port of Baltimore, 4 temporary channels of varying depths have been created. The newest and deepest one is 35 feet, allowing for larger commercial vessels to make their way through. This channel has allowed some of the ships that have been stuck in the port since it collapsed to leave.
By the end of May, that's when they intend to fully reopen the Port of Baltimore. Reporting from the Patapsco River, I'm Dennis Valera for CBS News, Baltimore.
Thank you, Dennis. All right, so why did this happen? Who is responsible? That's the big question. And now we're joined by Baltimore Banner reporter Lee Sanderlin, who has more on the FBI's investigation, digging into why the dolly crashed and, again, who's responsible. Good to see you, Lee.
Hi, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about the status right now of the FBI investigation. How far are they? What have we learned, if anything, so far?
Well, right now we don't know too much other than the fact that agents raided the ship going on almost 2 weeks now. We know that they went aboard the ship. They are looking for answers to some of the same questions that federal safety regulators are looking to. They want to know, why did that ship lose power? Why did it lose engines right after leaving port? And did the crew know something before it left port?
So we know that the Banner published its own investigation, that was yesterday, Thursday, on just how common it is for ships to lose engines in and around the Patapsco, to lose power. What can you tell us about that? How common is it?
We found out that it happens probably a lot more often than we'd like to think it does. We were able to find more than 100 instances of large freight vessels losing engines in the Patapsco and the Chesapeake Bay going back to 2010, including some really near misses near the Key Bridge previously and the Bay Bridge. I mean, we had large ships just as big as the Dolly that lost power right when they were going under the bridges.
So the difference is they didn't hit a post?
Yeah, that's the difference, right? I mean, the Dolly lost engines at the exact worst place at the exact worst time possible. And these others were just near misses that we kind of wrote off because no one got hurt. No bridge fell down.
So I assume the FBI is now trying to find out, is there negligence involved? Did they know they had power problems, et cetera?
Absolutely. I think that is the point of the criminal probe, to see if there was negligence, and if so, if it rose to the level of criminality.
All right, fascinating. Thank you, Lee, for your good reporting on this, and we appreciate your joining us. And if you'd like to learn more about Lee's story and others from the Baltimore Banner, head to thebaltimorebanner.com. When we return, we'll take a look at how artists are honoring the victims of the Key Bridge collapse through their work. Stay with us. Well, our community, of course, continues to mourn the loss of the Key Bridge and those who lost their lives when it collapsed. And some are choosing to do that through art and creative expression. In a move so classically Baltimore, Juliet Ames, the wonderful Juliet Ames, created a tribute to the bridge on a salt box and shared the photo via X, saying she felt compelled to make this for the 6 construction workers who were killed. She also thanked all the people who worked overnight to keep people safe every day. And Dallas-based artist Roberto Marquez created a mural just outside Fort Armistead Park dedicated to the 6 men who lost their lives. It includes crosses with flags of each of the victims' birth country and personal items, including construction hard hats and boots. Family members of the victims also left handprints and messages on that mural.
When I was a young kid riding over the Key Bridge, so many memories.
And here you go. These Dundalk guys wrote this song, It's a Dundalk Thing, which has more than 300,000 views online, to proudly show the blue-collar spirit of this community to unite and help each other grieve. And they sold T-shirts with the help of 31 local businesses. All right, thank you so much for joining us as we mark 1 month since this tragic moment in our city's history. I'm Denise Koch.